just going to stick it.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So we will begin the Blackstone Millville Regional School Committee meeting for Wednesday, March 19th. If you could rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll do introduction to members.
I'm Steve Tringali from Millville.
And Mike Buckley from Blackstone. Brian Faulkner, Millville.
Morgan McCarthy, Blackstone.
Thomas Gallagher, Blackstone.
Diane Robin, Blackstone.
Erin Binaco, Millville.
Dr. Perry Davis, Superintendent of Schools.
Bill Chaplin, Blackstone. We will begin with consent agenda A.
If I can, Mr. Chairman, the minutes that are listed are not ready, so we will not be approving minutes. And the warrants, the payroll warrant is number 21 with an expense warrant of 1022, and the payables are 1704, 1705, and 1706.
Okay, so we've got warrants, use of school facilities, there's none. Field trip request, I don't think there's any.
There is one for a UMass Memorial Health Care Expo. It's
Okay.
in the freedom file.
Okay. So I'd look for a motion to
So
accept
moved.
consent agenda A minus the minutes of March 12, 2014.
So moved.
Motion made by Ms. Robin,
Second.
second by Mr. Tringali. Any discussion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous. We will do student reports next.
I'll go. So I don't have much to talk about at this meeting. We just had a honorable breakfast last Thursday. So that took place during block, and we had more students than our first honor roll. So that was a good turnout, and we did run out of food. So that was good. We had, I think, like this much food left at the end, so it was all gone. And then we have had spring sport tryouts all week. So varsity softball, we just ended our tryouts today. We have our team set. Baseball is in the gym right now. Track and tennis have tryouts still going on.
Did you get on the fields or no?
I don't know if we're gonna get on the
Right.
fields for a while.
Mhm.
It's hard in the gym, but I mean we've gotten used to it as the years have progressed. Tomorrow we have the Band-Aid that the Principals Council puts on at the high school, and it starts at 6. So we have, I think, isn't it like 7 bands?
Yeah, 6 or 7.
6 or 7 bands that'll be performing, and Mr. DeWolf with some of his junior
Dudes?
teammates will be
I think it was
opening
dudes,
up
wasn't it?
tomorrow.
DeWolf and the Dudes.
The Wolf and the Dudes.
Wolf and the Dudes.
That's the name of it.
So they're opening up tomorrow, so it'll be fun to watch. And that's pretty much what's going on right now.
Okay.
All right, well, myself and 11 other students, we went to a student council conference in Hyannis 3 weeks ago now, and it's a statewide conference. It's there every year. This is my 3rd time going. I've gone every year since sophomore year.
Did you jump in the water?
No, I did not do the polar plunge.
Why not?
Some other people did. And they
My
ended up
brother
getting
did the
sick.
polar plunge.
They ended up getting sick, so I'm glad I didn't do that.
He's home sick now.
I was smarter than that for once. But that was a good experience. I think especially for the younger kids to be able to get out and just meet all the other kids that are just excited about something like that. There's a bunch of great workshops. I know Alex McIsaac and I ran a workshop for about 45 kids, and Eric Eisner and Sarah DeWolf ran a workshop, and they're only sophomores, so that was cool for them to be able to step up and do something like that. Last week, we had the senior class held Mr. BMR, which was one of our biggest fundraisers so far. It's actually worked out really well, way better than we anticipated.
Mr. BMR right here, ladies and gentlemen.
And who won?
Mr. BMR?
We had, as you guys know, we're the first class in 13 years to have an overnight trip for our senior class trip. Thank you guys for that, for proving that. We got 90 kids to sign up, so we'll be able to take it.
Good.
We needed, I think, 84, and then we have 90, and there's more signing up every day to
Right.
get it. So we're excited about that. And Winter Percussion, which I'm involved in, has its last show next weekend at North Andover High School. It's a New England championship, so everything's kind of wrapping up for the winter now, and then almost done. I think 42 more days for the seniors, so
41.
I
Not
was just
including
going to
today,
ask
so
that.
it's 40.
41.
Because I wrote it on the board today.
Usually that's Mr. Faulkner's first question.
So close, so close.
Any questions or comments from the committee?
Yes.
The concert, is that a fundraiser?
Yes.
Well, make sure you tell people so they show up.
It's for senior scholarships. They
There we go, that's a good
Go
one.
towards senior scholarships
And
for
they've
awards.
put
and-
several of them out, too, so that's a
Yeah.
good thing.
All right.
Yeah, there's all the scholarship information went out in guidance 2 weeks ago, I think, and then the Music Association just put out their scholarship application 2 days ago, I think. So.
Yeah.
You
They
probably
had
providing
teachers
earplugs
passing
at the
out,
door, right?
Yeah,
like,
earplugs at the
scholarships and
door.
homerooms too, so that all
Okay.
seniors did
Moving that up.
know that they had to. Yeah, we're encouraged to fill it out.
Good.
And Tom, your band is playing tomorrow night, right?
Yes, my band is fine.
Okay.
Okay.
You need earplugs because you're the lead singer, I believe?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
we don't talk about
What do you mean, front row seat? Come on.
That's great. Any other questions or comments? Great.
Good luck.
Good job.
Awesome job.
Thank you.
Great job.
Thank you.
Hit the field.
I know. Sorry, I look like a scrub. I keep the tryouts.
We'll have our first public forum, if anyone would like to come up and have any comments or questions for the committee. Seeing none, we'll move on. School committee, FY15 proposed budget, budget approval, budget assessment, budget certification, and review of superintendent candidate site visits. So,
If I can,
Please.
Mr. Chairman. This is the booklet we used last week for the public budget hearing, which contains all of the numbers. The school committee tonight will continue with any discussion on the proposed FY15 budget. Then the committee will need to move to approve the FY15 budget, and then discussion on the assessment. Again, that's referred to as the back page. And then the FY15 budget certification. And there are a series of 7 motions that are laid out in your packet, and we'll need a school committee member to make each one of those motions with a second, and then an individual vote on each one of those motions. One thing about the process you're doing tonight, the budget at this point has been a proposed budget. By taking action on your gross budget and taking action on your certification, we comply with the district agreement, and then we'll so notify the 2 towns of your action. This sets your high watermark for the budget. By state law, you cannot exceed the number you vote tonight. You can move at any time to lower the budget, and have that option at any time as a district, regional district committee. But what you are discussing tonight does become the highest level of budget in terms of the operating budget and the capital budget. And then the certification, notification that goes to the 2 towns, that puts you at your highest level for assessment to the 2 towns. But it does not mean it's your final budget, because obviously we now start the serious process of discussing with the 2 towns the impact of this budget on the local revenues for both Blackstone and Millville. Are there any questions on that? Again, it's complying with your regional agreement. So many days before the first town meeting, you must certify a budget, and then also certifying your assessment sets your high water mark in terms of the impact on the 2 towns by both state law and regional agreement.
okay, so we're going to go with a motion, Karen?
Are there any questions on the budget at this point? Okay. So, Mr. Chairman, there are a series of motions here. The first one is to approve the FY15
I
budget.
don't have any
Yeah.
other motions, no.
Share it, Mike.
Mr. Chairman, I move to adopt the, I make a motion to move, motion to adopt the gross operating budget for the 2014-2015 school year
Let me just keep it.
in the amount, not school year, FY 2014-2015 in the amount of $22,090,979.
Motion made by Ms. Robin, is there a second? Second by Ms. Vanaco. All those, any discussion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Unanimous.
The next motion is to move to apply the following reimbursements to reduce the budget. These are the offsets. Chapter 70 is the state aid, that's based on the governor's budget. Regional transportation aid, again, that's based on the governor's budget. There is an offset on the revenue sheet. We are losing money for school choice and charter school, and that is a minus, that's why it's in the parentheses, of $315,098.
I make a motion to move to apply the following reimbursements to reduce said gross operating budget for 2014-2015 year. Chapter 70, $10,684,594. Regional Transportation, $433,478. And the school choice charter offset negative is $315,098. Above reimbursements totaled $10,802,974. The total net operating budget for 2014-2015 is $11,288,005.
Motion read by Ms. Finacco. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Buckley. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous.
The next motions now take us to the assessment process. That is, we have to apply the Chapter 70 money, particularly for the town of Blackstone and then the town of Millville. And so these numbers, you'll notice, will have the town of Blackstone, and they will also include a motion for the town of Millville. That's because the Chapter 70 money is allocated to each one of the respective towns, and we must give them full credit for their Chapter 70 money.
Motion.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move to assess the amount of $7,368,976 to the town of Blackstone to be applied to the operating budget for the 2014-2015 year, which includes $6,313,167 for the minimum contribution, $1,055,809 in exclusionary costs, and $1,051,014 for in additional contributions.
Motion is read by Mr. Tringali. Is there a second? Second by Ms. Robin. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous. Second motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move to assess the amount of $2,288,361 to the town of Millville to be applied to the operating budget for the 2014-2015 year, which includes $1,870,811 for the minimum contribution, $417,550 in exclusionary costs, and $415,654 in additional contributions.
Motion read by Mr. Buckley. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Robin. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous. Next motion.
Move to apply the following amounts to the gross operating budget for the year 2014-2015. Medicaid, $60,000. Interest, $4,000. User fees, music, athletic, $65,000. Rental of classrooms, $35,000, for a total of $164,000.
Motion is read by Mr. Faulkner. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Robin. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Next motion.
The next motions deal with the capital budget for both towns, and again, the motions, there'll be one for Blackstone and one for Millville.
Mr. Chairman, I move to adopt a capital interest budget in the amount of $330,196 to be assessed solely to the town of Blackstone, which includes $170,417 for the FWH Middle School, $108,706 for the BMR High School sewer connection, and $51,078 for the roof projects.
Motion made by Ms. Robin. Just a correction, there was $170,412. I think he said 417
Oh, sorry.
for the FWH Middle School. So motion made by Ms. Robin. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Finacco. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Next motion.
I move to adopt a capital and interest budget in the amount of $120,689 to be assessed solely to the town of Millville, which includes $67,394 for the Hartnett Middle School, $42,991 for the high school sewer connection, and $10,304 for the roof projects.
Motion made by Ms. Finacco. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Robin. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous. That was that, right?
We will transmit to the towns the certification votes from this evening and send those along to the town halls in the next day or so. And you need to authorize that the superintendent signs on your behalf for those. That's been the practice of those letters going out.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Buckley, seconded by Ms. Robin. All those in favor, someone saying aye?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous. Next thing on the agenda is review of the superintendent candidate site visits. So Mike and I went and visited the Sutton Public School District last Thursday, as well as Wellesley High School on Friday. So I think what we'll do is we'll just kind of go through our notes, talk about the groups that we met with, the information and feedback that we got, and then open it up for some discussion. And then the next phase of that is planning the in-district visits for next week. And there's a couple of versions that we can talk about that I've talked to Art Betancourt and Caroline Burke about. So, Mike, do you want me to start?
Go ahead.
Okay. So on Thursday, we went to the Sutton Public Schools from first thing in the morning, 8 o'clock, till about 12:30. Margot Austin was our host. We didn't spend a lot of time with her. She kind of just moved us around to the different groups that we were seeing. The first person that we saw was the superintendent of schools, Ted Friend. And the feedback, and we can both stop there at each section, Mike, and then I'll
Sure.
give feedback, and you give feedback. He described Margot as a really hard worker. They have a great balance within their team as superintendent and assistant superintendent of special ed and curriculum. Talked about her willingness to, in her drive in terms of her organization and meeting. I was in her office. Her office was very organized. All of her people that report to her talked about the balance that they have, how he really deals with a lot of the community. They're building a high school. They're in the final phase of building their high school right now. So he does a lot of the community work and the building project work around that. She has dealt with a lot of these, all of the special ed and all of the curriculum. When he talked about her being driven, he talked about how she can manage a meeting and always have some type of work product at the end of the meeting and make sure everyone's heard. She really was he reported that she was really in their 5-year strategic plan, she really shepherded that thing from beginning, middle to end and drove it the whole way. So I'm going to stop there. You jump
Yeah,
in, Mike.
we had some interesting discussions with some parents that had dealt with Margot in the special in student services, and they are very. Sutton is very fortunate. They have a fairly low amount of students outplaced, so they've been able to bring many of the tuitioned out students in. However, that has not precluded them from moving children to the right program, whether it be within the town of Sutton or external to the town of Sutton. And you can obviously, you can see that she has been a strong advocate for the children in question. We had one parent that had some issues around really English learning, and the commitment that that Sutton did put forth has meant a lot to that family, where that the child has developed along a fairly strong path. She obviously does have a very strong work ethic. It's very evident that that the team there looks to her for support in some of their initiatives and so forth. We met with some regular ed teachers, as well as speech pathologists, as well as some other folks using an inclusion group and so forth. And this was, I think they were primarily elementary. I think we might have had a couple of middle school folks in that discussion. We also met with selection of students that had gotten to know Ms. Austin through her work in the learning community group that they've put together there. And it was a pretty, they were mostly high school kids, I think, that were that, so.
Yeah, I mean, they all were part of the district learning team that Margot shepherds every other month, where the whole district gets together and takes on initiatives. Some of the initiatives have been, community service learning, some of the homework policies, those type of things. So it was really each group, the parents and the students, really talked about how she has the ability to, if the meeting starts at 3 and ends at 4, it starts at 3 and ends at 4, but the amount of work that it get done and can produce has been really good. That was a consistent piece of feedback, and always having that work product at the end. The students talked about how she's very visible, always checking in with students throughout the district. She was a part of some of those students were a part of the principal search committee as well as some of the parents, and it was kind of that same focused, driven, taking charge style that she had, that really really worked hard at including all the voices, making sure everyone was heard. Her special ed side of her, the parents really talked about how if you ever want an advocate, she's the person you want in the room with you. No matter if it's in-district services or out-of-district services, it's really, it always goes back to what the student needs. Both groups talked about great facilitating within the meeting, having a strength-based focus. A lot of them also said that she has a very strong personality that goes with that, when you're driven that way, and how that can sometimes turn some people off, but she's able to kind of bring them back into the fold as well during all of those. Consistently heard, always on point. If she doesn't know information or needs more information, she's very driven about getting the information that group needs, they talked about how each summer they have a summit, and talking about where they are with the strategic plan, and how they develop it, and really having a reflective process around that. And she's really been seen through all the groups as really a core person that really drove that. The teachers that we saw also gave feedback around more on the principal search committee, how she drove that, and really how, when she first got there, she was there probably 6 or 7 years, I think she's been there 7 or 8 years, where there might have been kind of that us, them, general ed, special ed in the beginning, but she's really been able to come up with, it's really not an us, them thing anymore, it's just us. And that was really driven through teachers and other administrators, as well as students and parents. You want to talk about the Golden Apple? The Green Pen memo?
You can talk about the Golden Apple, but the other thing is we also met with some of the administrators. We met some middle school principal. Sutton right now is in the process, in a real difficult situation where they've had to fire their general contractor that's building a new middle high school. And what they've done is, I don't know if you're familiar with the Sutton schools, but they're basically, at one point in time, they were all interconnected. So they started at early childhood, elementary, a middle school, which was the old elementary, and then the high school. So what they've done is that they've torn the middle school down, and the middle school students are between the elementary and portables in the yard. And the high school, the old high school building is going to be torn down, and they're building this middle high school adjacent to the elementary. They're no longer interconnected, but that cold day, Mr. Chairman, I think you'd agree that they should have left the interconnection up.
We almost got knocked
It was
over.
unbelievable. But, so they're behind schedule, and you can tell that it is a little bit chaotic in the way that it's set up there, but, they're managing through that. Once again, the middle school principal feels supported by Margot, and we also met an assistant principal in the high school who does some work with the alternative work that she has been supportive of. And then they do have a Golden Apple Award, which Bill and I were given one each. I have mine, but you can explain to her what that means.
I mean, the other piece that the administrators talked about and the teachers was, Margot's also very open to, if you don't agree or something, one of the teachers said during the principal search process, he really had some ideas in the high school around the way the direction should go, and Margot wasn't opposed at having a closed-door conversation around, hey, and taking feedback from him. Which I thought was important, and really having those difficult conversations and being a two-way street. The Golden Apple is the result of her, every month she does a green pen memo, and it's on green stationery, and it goes out to the whole district, updating where all the tasks are and so forth, and all their initiatives within her role as the assistant superintendent. She gave us a copy of it. I can give you guys copies of the last one. And it's just a nice little update to everybody in the district to all be on the same page, all be informed about where they're at. And she recognizes somebody in there each month within the district. And the district doesn't know, well, this is what she said, the district doesn't know that, but you have to be nominated 3 times within the month of doing something out of the ordinary, and really going the extra mile. And that's been going on, a lot of the feedback we got from the teachers, that's been going on for years. I think what she gave us one was Volume 8 edition, so it's been going on 8 years.
Yeah, so
Each
she-
year
we
is
knew
a
it since she
volume. That was
started.
number 9 of Volume 8. So that's something, and I can see her being very driven and making sure that gets out and recognizing people that are working really hard within the district. Let's see what else here. I mean, clearly the special ed part of it, consistently throughout every group we met with, she's an ace at that. And she really kind of talked to us, Mike, around how she wants to kind of spread her wings, because we said, geez, it sounds like you're the heir apparent here. You know, why are you looking elsewhere? She talked about how she really wants to spread her wings even more with the community work. She does do presentations to the FinCom and so forth, but she really wants to spread her wings even more, and that and everyone pretty much consistently said she's really ready. They would hate to lose her, but they are very, they're happy that she's at this point and would move on. What else?
Yeah, I think that was probably the couple of things that were just, there's the community, she's just starting into that role. It seems like that the superintendent pretty much is the big picture guy and, frames the direction of the district. And some of these other special projects have gone to Margot. And, there were a couple things that just, and I'd be amiss if I didn't bring them up, is that we didn't have anyone from the union leadership present, nor from the school committee. So those were 2 little holes that, sometimes it's nice to hear, just from the organization that deals with them on a regular basis, as well as the committee, but that was not in the cards. She's part of the, he calls it his cabinet. It's basically the business manager, the superintendent of schools, Margot, and then I believe a curriculum person, or the tech director, one or the other. So they kind of like meet on a weekly basis. And then also, she meets like every other week with her staff and vice versa. So it's like not a lot of travel time when they're all interconnected buildings, so you don't have to drive around. So I think that pretty much about covers it.
Questions?
Yeah.
It was like literally whiteout conditions as we were walking through the windows that day. It was nuts.
You said she's the assistant, and she's like the heir apparent. What's the sort of status of the current super? Is he kind of entrenched for the long haul? And
He was a finalist in a couple of places, I think this year and last year. But I think the feedback that Margot gave us was that he's going to be there for at least another contract, was her impression. Which again explains that she wanted to continue to expand her wings and not. I mean, she loves the balance that they both have together, but she really wants to get into, like Mike said, the community and the bigger picture.
Did you get a sense that she had any budgeting experience or working on that, like a bottoms-up approach to the budget creation?
Yeah, I mean, I think the feedback that we got from the people throughout, that, the special ed budget's been hers for a long time, the whole time. And Mike mentioned the cabinet that they have there. That's all kind of a think tank around the district budget with the tech director and her, and the superintendent, and as well as the leaders of each of the buildings. The feedback that we got from them is that, again, meetings that she coordinates, driven, get a work product at the end. So I think it's that collaborative approach she's definitely been exposed to.
There was a tad bit of a, question on, like, the free thought. And I'm just trying to figure out how I want to phrase this. That a lot of times the word rely was used, and that's fine, but that was just a concern of mine, that, there wasn't an awful lot of, free thinking and maybe,
What do you mean by rely? What's the
well,
context
that
of
was the phrase that was used in some of the discussions, like they rely on her to, like, make the decision for
Okay,
them.
okay. Not that she was relying on someone else, that's what I just wanted.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's it. So, that was just a concern of mine.
Mhm.
And there was talk about, again, driven, go-getter, always does her homework, always shows up prepared. I think, I'm trying to think what group we asked, Mike, but we talked about delegation. How is she at delegating? Might have been her team chairs and then some of the teachers. And they were pretty responsive that, within all of that, she also can collaborate and delegate out there as well. Good, we move on to
Yeah,
Friday?
maybe something will come after.
Okay, that's fine. So Friday, we went to Wellesley High School, which is a beautiful high school. I don't know, how much did it cost to get the building?
$156 million.
$156 million. So the first group that we met with at Wellesley High School was a group of, there was an elementary principal within the district, who was the other, several others, Mike?
The elementary principal, there was.
SPED director.
SPED director, these are probably all like directorships type thing.
There were several people that he mentored when they were going through their administration training that are still teachers, but that when they went through their administrative program that he mentored, as well as, who was the building project data person?
Yeah, that she's actually works in his office, and she's like the data person, but her role has been very varied. She was also the liaison between the building project and the principal's office. So she did like the day-to-day, meeting with what was going on in the building, and then summed it up and just presented the salient points to him. And I have to understand, this new school was built 8 feet away from the old school, and much like, we know the socioeconomics are quite different in that community, but I'm looking at my friend Mr. Faulkner here. Much like the towns here, a strong sense of community about that old building. I mean, to the point of that, factions didn't want to see it removed, didn't want to see it torn down, wanted to see it renovated. Old Wellesley versus new Wellesley, if you will. When they put the lights out, they had a ceremony, and 4,000 alumni showed up.
Right. It was called a Lights Out
Lights Out.
ceremony, and it was from a lot of collaboration about how do we do this sensitively, and continue to be excited about the new building. That was a big dynamic. There were also $20 million under budget and 6 months early. I said, I don't know how you did that. But I think the overall from that group, they talked about how he a lot of thinking out loud goes into his meetings in collaboration with them, where they can think out loud and also challenge each other's thinking. A lot of collaboration. All of them pretty much consistently said he has a unique way of connecting with students, not just the high flyers or the ones down here, everybody from top to bottom. Special ed director talked about how very collaborative, step by step. They meet every other week. And Nora, who was also one of the people that he mentored, talked about how he isn't a person who gives the answer. He might know where everyone's going to end up, and he has a really nice gift of getting people to there themselves, and that was pretty consistent throughout everybody.
We heard that from the children as well, and one of the people that was in the first group was one of the art teachers, and he went to her, and he has an affection for making things out of clay, and she said his technique isn't really that great, but it's kind of interesting to watch. And what he hosts is Clay with Keo every Friday, and it's kind of open session, and it's any kid can sign up for it and show up there, and they not only do some things with clay, but they talk about life, and they talk about what's going on in the community or anything like that. So it's a chance for him to really get to know, and it's kind of open. And when they first started, they have 3 or 4 kids, show up. And then, in fact, they were very upset that this Friday was canceled because we were there.
You should have joined.
Well, no, we went down there, and I think Bill has a picture, which we thought would be worth some money to some of the folks in Blackstone and Millville who remember Andy. But the key thing is that he, it's just an opportunity to, get to know the principal, kind of get to know some other kids in the system you may be not exposed to, and that was a theme we heard all day long. It's a school of about 1,500, and yes, that would be Clay with Keo, and you'll notice that he's
Originally it was called Pot with Keo, and they had to change it because the kids were really making a negative
Connotations.
slant on it, so they had to really change it. Pottery with Keo, they were saying Pot with Keo, so we had to change it to Clay with Keo.
How
The
was
other
the
thing- one
how
of
was
the
the
other
attendance when it was called that?
The other thing he does is, and we met with students who had been doing it for the whole 4 years that they had been there. And we had a good array of students, some seniors, some sophomores, a freshman, probably about 8 or 9. And it was really a good cross range of students as well.
This wasn't all your Ivy League kids.
Yeah.
There were a couple of children, obviously, that, we had some issues, as well as, we had the head of the student congress who, works with him on a regular basis. But it was interesting that the way they were structured, and the way Wellesley always did it, was that there's three strands, like AP, honors, and CP. Well, if you were an AP and you wanted to go to step down, you found that it was too tough. Usually the schedule wouldn't allow you into honors. You'd have to jump all the way back to CP. And this was an issue. And, the students presented them with that issue, and they worked together with the administration to get that changed. And this was like, Wellesley never, very rigid. They never change anything. And it was like, this was, but made the case, got the buy-in from the administration, and it was one-on-one. We also had the faculty senate representative there, along those same lines about how they've approached class size, how they've approached what's offered. We also had a nice discussion with the president of the union, along some of the same lines about issues that they've had to deal with, and sometimes it's been work to the union's advantage, sometimes it's work to the school's advantage, and there's been a good respect from.
But no matter what, always being heard, always felt like they left feeling valued and heard, whether they agreed or disagreed. And parents said the same thing. There was another thing that he started, too, called Walk and Talk on Thursday afternoons. And he would just go and walk around Wellesley with students, walk around the neighborhoods. And there was a girl who was one of the students that came, and she said, she wouldn't do any other clubs if she wouldn't have done any other clubs if she didn't start with that one. There was one there. It was kind of like Vinnie Barbarino, who was great, and he was awesome, and talked about how he does the walks and he did the clay, and that he was pretty fair. He goes, he pretty much started, I'm probably the only one that's been disciplined around this table, by Mr. Keogh and Dr. Keogh, and he said he goes, he's pretty fair. I get it. So that it was a nice group of students. It was a nice group of teachers that kind of said the same thing around always being heard. But there was a great sense throughout all the groups that we met that Dr. Keogh was really heavily involved in the community building, inside the school and outside the school. Inside the school, about how the culture has changed to be much more inclusive. It just wasn't whether you're an AP student or whatever level student you are, it was always about what was good for all students. And that was a culture change for them. And it was a culture change for parents. It was a culture change for teachers. And they're there now. I think they're probably at their peak right now.
Yeah, and there were some good innovations and good approaches to how he built consensus with parents, with the community. Now, when he was named principal, he was named in February, he was going to start in July. He started with the building committee right away, so he was an integral part of that whole project. And a lot of decisions fell to him, and they have a building committee that basically it builds all the town buildings. So not only do you have school committee members there, you also have people and all this stuff. And we got to meet the guy that's the maintenance director of the whole town, and they've worked hand in glove with with this whole project, because not only did you have to build around it and all of that stuff that goes with it, then you had to remove the old one, and that became the parking area and so forth. And as they're planning this great celebration, they're going to move in the Monday after February vacation. And no student has been in the building, with the exception of some of the children with some challenges, like some visually impaired children. They brought them in ahead of time with their teachers and took them through the whole place, so that and any child that maybe was having anxiety over the change. And very well done. So now they're planning this big celebration, town-wide celebration. This is a big deal. The other building was built in '38, so it's a once probably in a couple of three generations.
And everyone was walking in together. Students, community members, staff, they were all going to be going in together.
So he also had an exercise that, take what you need and leave what you don't need behind. And about life, like leave the bad stuff behind.
Everyone read the book, Things to Carry. So what are we going to carry, figuratively, from the old school to the new? And that was a big leading up point to that.
So then they're all set to do this, and then they get word that a freshman in high school, a young lady, has been killed in a skiing accident, like 2 days before. So now he has to shift gears, still open the building, still allow for the recognition of that, but not, he'll also have to address this. And to a T, I think we heard from 4 or 5 others that how he handled that was just amazing.
Mm-hmm. I mean, the balance of celebration, but also to recognize the loss. He had her parents there. In the old building, all the students wrote a message on the wall. And he went and had her message carved out and made a piece of the new building in one of the display cases, in the brick, and so it's there forever. So, and the speech that he had that day was pretty much consistent from everyone we heard, was the perfect balance of celebration and recognizing the loss. And that was kind of a theme throughout. Everyone was heard, the students really talked about how everybody has the ability to be great. And the one student, one of the kids in student government, who really worked with them around the policy, because God forbid kids couldn't go from AP to honors because it just didn't match, and he really worked at how people could do that. And the one student he coached, he came to him in the beginning and said, I really can't handle the AP, I want to go to the honors. And they worked at the policy change, but in the meantime, the kid chose to stay and throughout the year in the AP and stick it out. You know, as we walked around with him, kids knew his name, he knew everyone else's name, as well as Margot. They talked about him being a problem solver, valuing everybody. The last group we met with was the central office, so the superintendent, we had a former select person who had been probably, she was competing with you a number of years.
I think her name is G. Babson, as in, she's the heir to the Babson College. In fact, the auditorium is named for one of her ancestors, I guess. And she had served 12 years as a member of the Board of Selectmen and had been on this building committee. And then there were, I believe Wellesley has 100%, at least at one time, within the last couple of years, all 5 members were women on the school committee. And the chair was there, as well as one person that has just gotten off. And she was also on the building committee. And she was part of the process that hired him. You know, to a man, to a woman in the whole organization. It was just a tremendous amount of respect and admiration for him, and knowing that this is, you know, what he wants to do. And but they feel that he's leaving them in a good place, and whether it's us or someone else. I wanted to step back a little bit into the parents, because it was interesting to hear from the parents. We had a couple of parents that had children that were older that had the previous regime, shall we say. And so it was good to see how that had changed. And it was a parent that had was taking care of a nephew, and the nephew had struggled under the old regime, and then her own kids. And she tells the story about one of her children had gotten into trouble, and she was adamant that he's not going to get suspended. She's going to appeal this, you know, and she didn't feel this was right. When she was finished, not only did the child still have serve the suspension, but she felt satisfied that, you know, that they were doing that for the best interest of the kid, and that, you know, there was no strings being pulled, and no one was being punitive to this person. And you know, she says, I actually left feeling pretty good. Which, you know, must be hard to think that, you know, you had all the expectations that you were going to go in there and change the world. And so it kind of shows that, you know, I think Dr. Keogh has the children's best interest at heart, but it shows that he can, you know, he can make the decision, and he can, you know, move on from that. So that's pretty strong.
Yeah, I mean, I think the other thing that stuck out for me that I specifically wrote down was one of the department heads, or several of the department heads, talked about how Dr. Keogh is so ingrained in the core values that he lives and breathes them. And as a result, over the last 6 years, everyone else is living and breathing them now. And he talked about at one point during a staff meeting, you know, Dr. Keogh was saying, listen, if you're not outraged over someone breaking or going against some of our core values, then it wasn't a core value for you. And how that's been ingrained in everybody's brain over the last 5 or 6 years. And that stands out. That stands out for him. There was one other thing.
He is very active PTSO, Parent Teacher Student Organization. And of course, they've been able to, you know, they're obviously a pretty well-to-do community, but the way they've structured it, it kind of gives me ideas, like back to what certainly Justin does, as well as what we have on the elementary levels, is that if he's interested in a project, or he basically sells that to them, like, I don't know, we want to buy some more, we want to buy half a dozen more flat-screen TVs for whatever. I'm just showing that out there. And if he gets buy-in, or maybe a program, maybe to bring in a visiting poet, or you know, some type of curriculum thing, many times the PTSO will like fund or partially fund that, and then he has taken some of those programs and then moved them into the budget after he's proven that they were of value. So the school committee's not buying the pig in the poke. They're actually, okay, this has been thought out, we have evidence of it being successful, and, okay, this is a good investment. So I was really kind of impressed by that. And, we're not talking, putting a turf field in or something big like that. This was really, student-based stuff for the children.
The last thing was that the elementary principal talked about how, again, that superintendent talked about how he has a cabinet, and all the building leaders meet, every other week, and that how Dr. Keough is really a leader even within there, talking about policies around the elementary schools, around the middle school, collaborating with them. They talked about how the decisions around going for a full kindergarten, full-year kindergarten, and how he was a big part of that. And clearly, he was a standout in terms of the budget discussions that they have. I mean, that was pretty much it.
We did meet, like I said, pretty much the whole, very, very widespread, from leaders from other buildings, the business manager, his assistant principal. I think one of the key things that I asked the question, okay, so he leaves, what happens to Wellesley? And really it was without skipping a beat that, he's built this fabulous culture there, and that, the second in commands are ready to, if they happen to step up, or that they know what their role is. So that was, that was a concern, and I know that's a concern with the committee, like if, what happens if, Dr. Keough moves on from here, and so forth. But I'm hopeful that.
The students we met with, the seniors are like, yeah, we're leaving, so, because we asked them, so, what are you going to do? Seniors are like, yeah, well, we're leaving. We've had, and there was a sophomore and a freshman, like, what do you, we don't want them to go.
We thought maybe we had a couple of choice students, but it was a hell of a ride, though, yeah.
It was good. So, questions, comments?
No, I think you're pretty comprehensive in that evaluation. But I would ask both of you, for both candidates, are there any questions that you did not feel got answered? Is there anything else where you would have liked to go deeper? And do we need, what's the next step? Do we have another follow-up beyond the visit?
I think the visit, and then some, I think
I got, I think both are highly qualified.
Mm-hmm.
Both are similar in their styles in terms of inclusion and being driven. It's clearly going to be a tough decision. I don't know next steps in terms of doing another visit. That's going to be up to the committee. I do want to caution that they are also finalists elsewhere.
Yeah.
And I really want to keep the decision with us,
Yeah,
and the timeline. So
I was just going to ask if we knew where, but.
it's public information. I know
I just haven't looked.
Dr. Keough is a finalist in Easton, which
Do we
is
know
Olive
where
Branch High School, and
Miss Osteen.
I don't. I can look it up. But again, I think, so if there's no other questions with the visits, I think we have to talk about next stages,
Yeah, let's get to that.
timeframes, and,
No time to waste.
after I left, and I found out that, there were finalists elsewhere, I kind of semi-panicked, and I called Art, because Art's involved in every search in the whole state. And he said, and I said, I know it's always been a risk as we move through our process, and I really want to keep the decision with us. I don't want to, it was too bad that Azar, got scooped right away. But I do think we have to make some clear decisions in a time frame tonight around what the next step would be. And I think, there's a couple of versions that Art and Caroline gave me in terms of the Insight district visits, how we could do it. If we want to do it one evening, we could have both candidates in the district at different places throughout the afternoon and evening, and then end with meeting them again, maybe one at 6:30 and one at 7:30 or 8. and having some final questions. But really giving them each opportunity, have a catered meal here, I don't know how you do it with both candidates in there. I think we have to figure that out. But Art and Cowan also said, listen, they've been through this before. They know that they're finalists, and it's okay that they're in the district. Alternative would be doing 2 days. And how do we rally enough people to come in and want to meet them, students and parents and whatnot, 2 days in a row when you get a babysitter for one? So
Right.
I think that's a decision we have to make tonight, what that next picture looks like. And then who would take the lead in that, working with Perry in terms of the district building leaders and other stakeholders in the district around what that would look like. How would they meet with students? How would they meet with, in a timely way, over a 4-hour period of time, So I'm going to stop there talking and get your feedback.
One other question I have, which may be jumping a little further than that. Have we talked about as a committee how we're going to come to are we voting on this? Is it a majority or is it? I don't know that we've ever talked about how we're
I
actually.
think my
going-
impression is, and please, other people jump in, is that the time frame that we talked about was they would come in for an in-district visit, and I think Art even brought up, they would end that district visit with meeting with us again, in the public, all out in the open, maybe ask some questions similar to like, all right, well, you've been here, what do you think the top 3 things that Blackstone needs to do or facing
Right.
over there? So that type of
Or
thing.
they even said more public involvement in
right,
that last one. But to actually choose a candidate, are we?
I think, my impression would be that night, we deliberate and we make an offer, and we decide on which candidate best fits our needs. And 'cause the timeframe that I'm nervous about is I think we have to move.
Right.
Otherwise.
But is it majority? Is
agree.
it just a
It's-
majority vote?
Yeah, it's majority, okay, but I think with that, and other people, please jump into this, I think it's very important that we talk as a committee, no matter what the vote is, that, and I don't know how to do this, so I don't want to think I have a plan. I have no idea how to do this right now. We have to give whoever it is the impression that we are all behind that person.
Yes.
Because I got to be honest, if I was them and it was a 5-3 vote, I'm not sure I want to come here.
Well,
And I don't know how to do,
Or you know.
I don't know how to
I
do
know.
that, okay?
Well, I would suggest that, we deliberate, we come to a vote, it's the vote. And if the majority would rule, I would ask that, there'd be a vote to make it unanimous. Okay, because we do speak with one voice. And I think it's important that the new superintendent, we can have all our discourse and all our discussion, but once the majority exceeds, I think it would be in the best interest of the district, and that would be important to send a message to the candidate that, yes, you're our person.
Yeah, and that's exactly what happened. I teach in Northbridge, and we just had a superintendent search, and it was a 4-3 vote. And then they immediately re-voted, and it was 7-0, for exactly that reason. Show that we're all behind you,
Well, I think, absolutely, I don't disagree with that. I think our vote to move the 3 candidates forward was so close for every single, one was 6, 2 were 5, 2 were 4. There wasn't anyone that stood out one way or another. And I, just from hearing what you're saying and from the interviews, they're both highly qualified. I don't think we'd go wrong with either candidate, and I don't think anybody sitting around this table would say, oh, I hope we don't get that one. Either one of them is going to lead this district, so, that's certainly what I'm going into this with.
I just wanted to point out to the committee, you would take a vote to appoint a candidate, you would offer them a contract subject to negotiations. So, the other piece that you may want to consider doing is to draft a contract so that you have a sense.
Nailed down right away.
Right.
prior to,
I think you should do it concurrently and you don't want to offer somebody the job and say, well, we'll get you a contract in a week.
Right.
I think we should work with Attorney Gould and put together a packet with a contract. And these contracts are fairly basic, but the reality is you should have that pretty much
Okay.
nailed down. How you setting the salary, that's your decision to do. You've advertised a range, but actually the contract, probably I would advise we get started on that.
So any offer will be pursuant to said
Right. Right,
contract.
but
that's good. That's a
but
good
you need
step
to
to get
know
ahead.
that you may make an offer,
Right.
and somebody may turn it down. As Mr. Chaplin indicated, if candidates are candidating in another district, you need to be aware of that, and you need to be aware of the timelines to do that, so.
Well, we had meetings,
So you will just stay here, Perry, then?
works
Okay.
with us. We had dates, I think, already kind of
Sorry?
tentative. We had some tentative dates for,
Well, we said the 24th and 25th, Monday and Tuesday. But I think we need to make a decision, like now, if we want to do 1 day or 2 days. I don't think I'm out of line by saying, I think we're a week ahead than Easton. So if we go that way, or whatever way we go, again, I want to keep the decision at this table and not,
But in the same respect, it could come down to a contractual thing,
absolutely.
too.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, but
absolutely.
Even if we're a week ahead of someone,
Mhm.
if we're not
Yeah.
meeting a.
Right. I think Perry's point was, I wasn't thinking that way. I think we do have to
think that's a good idea.
have Attorney Gould set something up, maybe take the Hep C out, that paragraph, and then, and have something concurrent ready to kind of go. And, I think we have to decide what we want to do, 2 nights or 1 night, and then what's the 1 night, and then how are we going to structure it, and who's going to take the lead on that.
Well,
I
I'll volunteer to do what I can, and I'm planning on taking either 1 or 2 days off next week to do that. And I would suggest that, sometimes, especially for folks with young children, maybe it's easier to get a babysitter on 1 night rather than 2. Certainly, I'd like to see, no disrespect to the fine crowd we have here tonight, but hopefully we see more, especially folks that will either,
Bring a friend.
that will be impacted by the decision we make, so it'd be important.
date-wise, I actually, I can't do the 24th anymore. I can only do the 25th. I mean, I do trust you, so if we do I want to be in on the vote.
Yeah.
So, but if you do it on the Monday
every-
and the Tuesday, I'm good with,
I'm looking at the schedule right now. There's a band concert on Monday, the 24th.
Okay.
And there's not a whole lot going on the 25th. There's
Okay.
just sophomore
So,
ring night.
right, so let's say, are we all in agreement to do 1 night instead of 2?
Yes, I am.
Yeah.
Okay.
do you think it will be comfortable? We'll be okay
I
having
think
the
it's just how we
two?
plan it. I think it's okay.
Yeah, we just gotta come up with a logistical plan, and if you wanna work with the superintendent, we'll just kinda like
Okay.
lay the logistics out and
What
keep them moving.
I will be able to be here in the late afternoon and into the evening. Okay, so I'll be a part of it. I just can't be the total lead on it. So I would hope others
Same
would
with me.
step up, yeah, and just kind of do that.
I might suggest, because it's difficult with people, that we could do their visits to the school, 1 on Monday and 1 on Tuesday, and then have the candidate interviews on the Tuesday evening. And, we could arrange, some opportunity to not have them in the same room. But if-
Two
but it-
meals on one.
Well, no, but I mean, the reality of having hosts, with two groups, 2 subgroups of you folks, would be my recommendation.
All right.
You don't think we could?
You think we
swing
do it all in
around
one
and,
night?
I'm
Same
sorry?
day? You don't think we could balance them out?
I'm more thinking of their schedules, you don't know what they're committed to,
You mean
doing-
one in the morning, one in the afternoon, or both, like 12 to?
Just keeping their
3.
schedules opposite.
Well,
I think just keep it in
we
afternoon.
kinda keep it swapping. If we have someone in Millville, and we have someone in Blackstone, and then we have someone at the high school and the middle school, and then we swap. And then, once again, it's like, you want them to see kids, you want them to see staff, so you have to be cognizant of the dismissal times and things. I mean, certainly 2 days would be easier, but I'm just trying to tighten it up a little bit.
Yeah, I'm just putting that out there. Your schedule might not.
Would the building leaders be able to take a little bit of a lead in kind of putting together an hour or 45 minutes okay, so they would.
Those are both MCAS makeup days, though, right? In both
But if we do it in the afternoon, if we do it like from 1
So
on,
that's in the morning.
Yeah,
it
they
would be
are.
in the
They're
morning,
MCAS days,
and
right.
They're makeup days,
Yeah.
but
Mhm.
No, there's, the 8th grade reading is Monday,
Is it an actual MCAS?
yes, and the makeups.
I thought we tried to stay away
Makeups
from
are
that.
grade 3 and 4 are Monday, and 8th grade reading is Tuesday.
But again, those are mornings, I
It
think.
it looks
so-
like Tuesday's better. I mean,
Yeah.
Monday.
Well, you're talking a small population of students, though. Not talking a huge population.
But administrator-wise, that's a
Right,
lot
there's some
on the-
planning involved in that. You're right. In the afternoon, it generally dies down a little. I can speak for that, because I have a few more white grays here from the last
So
3
then you
days.
probably want to do them on separate days if they're only getting the afternoons. You're not going to have that flexibility of moving them through the
But if they
different.
come in, if they come,
They come in at noon.
you probably don't want to be so disruptive. You probably want to just have a, a section like, okay, we did the visits. We kept it to 4 hours. We saw at least a half a dozen groups. In about.
But I
You
think
can do it.
Students could do the
Yeah.
tours with, as well. There could be a meeting time for students to go in the afternoon before the end of the day. And then once the end of the day, there could be teachers that could have some time, to come in and meet.
If you guys think it's good,
Well,
I'm
again,
not.
I unfortunately have to take a half a back seat on this one and show up at the end. So if others wanna,
Well, we got to be sensitive to the fact that the high school gets out early and this school gets out early, and then the elementary has a little bit more time. So compressing it from 1 to 2,
You lose,
whatever the time
yeah.
is.
And,
You don't have a lot of
I
time
mean, you
there.
might as well X out that last half hour of the day, because I just think it would just be of each building, I think. And what do we need for committee representation? If we have both of them here at the same time, we need at least 2?
Yes.
Because you have to, so do we even have that? You both
Well,
just
I'm
said
pretty
you
good. I
couldn't
can
be here till the
split my
afternoon.
days.
Yeah,
If you want.
I'd say 3, it'd probably, 2 or 3 is the earliest I could arrive.
And the buildings are closed. Well,
but again, I think we're talking about 2 timeframes. School, meeting with kids, and then meeting with parents and teachers and
Okay.
others. So the parents, teachers, and others could be after school is out, okay, in the end. So, again, I think someone just takes a shot at drawing
Parents might
out
be easier
a
daytime.
timeframe. Say again?
parents might have an easier time daytime before the kids are out.
Some might,
I don't know.
you know.
Well, if you want, we could, Dr. Davis and I can put something together and send it to everybody tomorrow.
Do a
and then-
1 or a 2 day and see what it looks like, and then what we can, but I do think time is of the essence, too.
Keep in mind, your public interview is also an opportunity for teachers or staff or parents,
Mhm.
community people to come as well.
Right, yeah, 'cause I think we can have,
Right.
maybe have a meal or something, or, like that. So do you want to put something together, Mike, and see what it looks like?
Yeah.
Get it out to everybody? Okay.
And I'll call you in the morning and we'll kind of walk through it.
Okay,
So we're
anything
looking at
else?
Tuesday, the 25th is our target day.
Yeah, 25th.
Yeah, I just have to post your meeting. See, what time do you want to start your, 6:30? Do one at 6:30 and one at 7:30? And
Yeah.
then you do deliberations afterwards?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the only other thing is, I want to be able to give Caroline a call by tomorrow afternoon, just so we can give them a heads up. So I think something has to be firm by tomorrow afternoon late. So I can at least then call Caroline and say, this is what we got. Can you go present to both of them?
Well, we can brainstorm it now if you want to. I mean, it's up to you.
What do we have left on the agenda? You want to kind of take care of the agenda, get that set, and then
We
come
have-
back
we
to
have some,
this?
budget talk to talk about that might,
Oh, that's right, that might take some
um,
time.
Can we take another 10 minutes and kind of work on an
I
agenda?
think we should get it done.
Yeah? Okay. All right, let's do
So
that then.
basically, we have, I'm just going to think out loud here. We have obviously four buildings. We'll count the complex as one. So 2 elementary, a middle, and a high school. We have central office staff that we'd like the candidates to meet, maybe have a chance to chat with. I would think that a trip to each building would include maybe some interaction with staff and students, so seeing students in their environment. certainly the building leadership, as well as any support staff and so forth. We have, so that's like 5. That's 5 modules, if you will. And, you know, notice that Dr. Hawhey is here this evening, too. You know, there's the PPS business and his staff. Now, would it make sense to have, like, post-high school, middle school dismissal, where you could, like, people, if they wanted to come in, staff members wanted to come in and, like, have a little, you know, give and take, and then take the show on the road to either one of the elementary complexes after that to do the same thing? I don't know. There's, I mean, you're going to have a finite amount of time, like that noon to 2, or noon to 2:30, we'll say, and then, you know, after that, now, obviously, it will be at their discretion, the staff's discretion, but we would invite them to, you know, participate, maybe have them, each candidate say a few words at each assembly, maybe take a few questions.
You know what, the principal, when we did the principal search, I think it was maybe, it was right at the end of the day at the high school, I'm talking about Mr. Dudek, was they invited the kids in maybe the last half hour of the day. It might have been an hour, I'm not sure how much time they took. And the kids got to ask questions, and at the same time, parents were also invited in. I know I went. I don't know if I went as a parent or as a school committee person, but I think there were a couple of other parents there. I do remember seeing other parents there. And then they could stay after the kids left, ask their questions. And so that kind of went after school. So, and teachers came in also. So kind of in that last half hour of the day.
You could almost
School
do like,
assembly?
you could almost do like a 12 to 1, you know, could
Like
be
put
like
them
the
in the
central
spotlight.
office, or, you know, say 12:30 to 1, or something like that, and then 1 to 1:30 could be the candidate 1, and then that person, whoever candidate 1, then goes to the middle school. Candidate 2 goes 1:30 to 2, that's dismissal of 5 minutes to 2 or whatever. And then, you know, candidate 1 is over here doing maybe something similar. And then, in other words, they almost like follow each other
Right.
across the district.
One of the things that I thought was really beneficial was, because I was there while the kids were asking the questions, I thought that was more important than me listening to my question and asking it, just hearing how they interacted with the students, what the students were concerned about, that kind of thing.
That's a
So
good point.
I thought that was a really good, for me, sitting there, hearing
Right.
what was asked and how it was answered to the students.
I think, well, I'm trying to write down, from 12 to 5, we can cut up how it works out, and who starts where and whatnot. From 5 to 6, we would need to have a committee member, 2 committee members, each sitting down to dinner with them, and inviting others if they want, you know. And then, at 6 to 6:30, they can go and decompress, then we can do the interview and whatnot. So it's really, how do we cut up the 12 to 5 hours? And the central office, you know, could be Dr. Hawhey, as well as the central office, and building leaders could be that last half of the day from 4 to 5. You know, that's just keep it simple like that. But how do you do the 2? That's going to be
We
the challenge.
rotate them in,
Mhm.
so.
Well, you probably have, how many would be in that cohort?
Megan, I don't think we have to kind of,
But you know what I mean, if you just say you split it in
If
half.
there's 6,
so
you do
it's
3 and 3,
3 and 3 or whatever.
right, okay.
and then they swap.
We could do the district leadership team and the central office team. So the principals meeting with,
Okay.
and then the 4 principals and Dr. Hawhey meeting with 1 person, and then myself and Karen McGuire, Donna Scungio, and the support staff in the central office. And then we'd flip. One would go the internal corridor, one would go the outside.
Right.
They're going to know they're here at
Yeah,
the
of
same
course,
time.
of
course.
So the reality is to do that. The issue you're raising, though, Diane, I just want to clarify, having students ask superintendents questions, the superintendent is generally not somebody that, you know,
It could
students
be, yeah.
generally have a lot of interaction. I think Morgan and Thomas would be good people to do
I was
that.
thinking like K through 5 at the auditorium.
Big assembly.
Even
All I
like
want to know
maybe,
from the superintendent is, are you going to call school
Snow.
off?
That's right.
Snow.
Yep.
So,
How's the snow day plan there?
well, perhaps even, definitely those two,
Yeah,
if they want,
yeah.
if they're interested, but, and Mr. Dudek can probably pick a
student
couple.
leaders from
yes.
student council,
class
would be a
officer or
would be a representative group to have contact, and we could arrange that.
Right.
Again, faculty and staff, you want to create opportunities for that, but logistically in 4 buildings, it's
So they
difficult.
the faculty and staff will come to
These-
us instead of that, having to go
Right.
to 4
Well,
different
yeah,
buildings.
you
Well,
gotta, you can't be,
Right.
you gotta consolidate it, so.
Right, that would be
I mean, it
a
could be
whole day.
2:45 to 4, could be, having staff come to one central location. And again, like you said, having 2, and then flipping,
Right.
if they want to, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just like from 4 to 5
can
in the
do
central
that.
office, you'd be
Mhm.
flipping,
Right.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
We could do that, particularly, choose the middle school because of the availability of different rooms, and it also gives, the transition time from the leadership team and the central office staff, and then I'll assign somebody to be the host of each candidate, and then 2 rooms here, and then as middle school and high school people get their chance, then you can invite, you'll stay longer and you would integrate. Now, the problem is, the people aren't going to be able to see all of the candidate. They're going to have to choose.
Right.
I mean, that's your dilemma, you're just running out of time. But again, your interviews at 6:30 and 7:30, it would encourage people to come to those as well. It's difficult.
My concern is we want to make sure that constituency, that staff and teachers have that opportunity to see both.
Absolutely.
Because,
I
I don't think it's as important with the kids,
Yeah.
because I think the kids are going to be,
Right, but
who,
when
are you
you-
calling off school this
When
week
you're
or
trying
not?
to do it
But-
concurrently,
Yeah, but we got to make sure I want to just make sure we focus on carving out some time, not, because there's a lot of people who come into the district from far away
Yeah.
who have a significant stake in this. So let's try and make sure we can accommodate them.
we'll create the time.
And for
It might not
parents
be
as well.
convenient for everybody.
Yeah, I understand, but the
Okay.
more,
After
the
school may not
most
be.
we can,
Right.
encourage to come, the
Right.
better participation we'll have.
But if you're asking a high school teacher that finishes their day 2:30, 2:02, all right, and you arrange,
Hang on until-
that in order to see both candidates, they've got to really stay to like almost 3:30, that's a decision, they're invited, but that's a decision they'd have to make.
Right.
Much like the elementary people coming, they're getting out 3:15? So again, allowing people some travel time to get here, and then if they want to see both candidates, you can create that forum, but it's probably going to extend till 5 o'clock. That's all I'm saying. That's
No, I
the-
understand.
No, I say separate them. You can go and ask your question with one,
Right.
go to the next one. I mean, you
Right.
won't get as much out
And
of
some
it,
people
but-
may just want to stop in and hear what they have to say for a few minutes, go in and see the other one
Right.
for a few minutes, and that's enough.
And they also have the opportunity in the
They
evening,
can
so.
come hear the interview at 6:30.
Yeah.
Okay. All right,
So I
good.
will.
Good.
So we're talking Tuesday?
Yep.
Tuesday.
One day?
Tuesday.
Now, will either one of them have a problem with Tuesday if they're running MCAS makeups in their building? I don't,
I hope not. I think,
At-
I think
At
um,
this- at
I
that
think they
level,
want a
it's
job.
probably-
We did mention that to both of them over the interviews over the visits that, we were planning like early next week. And
24th,
and that, they were fine with that. And I think that both of them have appropriate staff, and I don't think Margot has any direct,
right.
cast responsibilities.
And I can tell Carolyn tonight, this is what we're looking at. She could reach out to them and say, hey, 25th is it. And I think they'll be okay.
Okay.
You can reach out and tell her that we can expect them to be at the superintendent's office by noon. We'll
Okay.
sort them at that point.
Okay, great. Okay, moving forward, report of the superintendent.
The report of the superintendent tonight is really to kind of focus on the hard work that the school committee is going to have to do in the next steps in this budget that we have now certified and sent on to the 2 towns. When I presented at the budget hearing, I specifically talked about how the budget was built around the learning needs of the students, but I also brought up the issue of the $1 million one-time revenue that we don't have going forward. It's $955,000, that was applied last year. We don't have that to offset the budget. So that is a revenue deficit, because again, the budget itself going up the overall increase in the budget you approved is 3.4%. 2.6 for regular ed, 6.7 for special ed. You know, it's up a little over 3% in terms of that. The reality is now is the committee, we don't know what the towns are going to say when they get those numbers. You know, we've had informal discussions. This is a much larger number than they were prepared to think about. We know that. Principally because you used one-time revenues last year to mitigate, to bring your assessment down. In order to do it, you don't have those numbers this year. And therefore, we need to kind of have that bold discussion, but ultimately, I want to share with you as superintendent that you have to have your process in terms of reduction strategies. And I am not suggesting to anybody in the audience that we're making cuts tonight, but we have to talk about reduction strategies as to where this money is. Again, the number could be the high number. If they said you get the same dollar amount you got last year, that deficit is over $1.4 million. $1.4 million, all right? That's, in my way of thinking, the worst-case scenario. It's somewhere, you know, on that continuum. I don't think it's 1.4 million, but I also don't think it's 200,000. It's a significant amount of money, all right, that we have to talk about, and we have to give direction to the leadership team. I've had 2 meetings with the leadership team and have posed this question. We met yesterday and went through the exact same memo that I'm going to take you through in a minute of how do we look at that. I want people to understand that in building the budget this year, there was a tremendous amount of effort that went into scrutinizing and looking at all of the major accounts to see if we could squeeze out money. And as I mentioned at the budget hearing, we were very successful in the area of health insurance because changes that were made in the health insurance plan, as well as our experience, what they call loss ratio, our premiums are staying the same going forward. That's a significant savings. We've already taken that. We knew it 2 weeks ago, and we presented it as part of our budget to take advantage of that. I've looked at the various utility accounts and instituted a 3-year rolling average to assess how much money we should budget for fuel, how much money we should budget for electricity. I've met with the Telstones to kind of look at transportation. The difficulty with transportation, it's not an easy exercise of just cutting a bus, all right? The contiguous nature of the 2 communities, the fact that we're servicing 2 separate elementary schools, and how, in fact, you know, we have to address the number of seats that we need. We have cost savings that we have because of the double run for middle school and high school. That's very efficient, but the ability to pull a bus out of that is not there. The same at the elementary school. You know, specifically, I looked at the enrollment decrease at Millville Elementary. However, there's a compact nature to Millville, and then there's the outlying bus. And we do have one bus that has almost a 45-minute outlier run, you know, almost going up into Uxbridge and having to turn around and come back and make another loop. So the reality is, you know, with that situation, all right, for safety reasons, we have to have that loop in order to accommodate. They're outlier children, but the compactness of the streets, you know, off of 122 in the center of Millville, if you will, those runs are pretty well packed. This other bus that is lower in numbers covers a broader area, and you just can't take 3 buses because then everybody's route is going to exceed perhaps an hour. It's not efficient, and it's not really safe to kind of move in that direction in terms of looking at that. The other issue is that building maintenance accounts for a long time in the district were underfunded. All right, there was no money for snow removal. Donna Scungio gave me the overtime just on snow removal. We've already spent $6,700 this year in custodial overtime. That doesn't include the salt and sand. I don't have that bill yet, but custodial overtime to do the plowing and the salting and sanding of the high school and the middle school. That wasn't budgeted. We need to budget money, you know, for these expenses and have them. So we do have that in the budget as we kind of go forward with that, as well as what I consider kind of nominal maintenance, if something in plumbing or electrical or heating breaks down. Every one of the schools this year has had something in their heating plant that has required the expense of several $1,000s, whether it's a circulator pump or a burner, or some other control. It's only because it's been a really severe cold winter, and the systems are getting taxed, and with that, they stress and things happen. So the maintenance budgets are up, but I would tell you that they really were underfunded in the past. Principals and I met yesterday. Could we go back and look at that budget and maybe snip around the edges and come up with $50,000? But we've done a lot of, holding, to that number, to develop a good number. And that would be an exercise that I think we could accomplish. But to find $200,000 in that process, all right, just by snipping at the accounts is highly unlikely.
I think, too, what needs to be clear, especially to the public,
Yep.
every year we usually come out with unexpended funds. We do not have that this year.
Right.
We don't have it. And, we always say it, and then we've frozen and then we start unhummering some funds, but the fact is, this year, there is nothing. We were
Yeah, and-
underfunded last year.
We had a double count of $300,000 in circuit breaker money. It was counted as a revenue, and it was also taken as an offset about budget. In the speed of doing the budget, I understand, but as I brought to your attention in October, that put the budget out of balance, and we have taken steps. And at this point, we're still slightly out of balance, and, I'm hoping that by June 30th, we'll be able to close that gap and deal with it. But the current budget will have no money, to go forward into E&D. All right? We are going to get a little bit more money in regional transportation aid to go forward, but we may have to, you as a committee may have to use money out of your E&D to actually make fiscal 14 come in at a zero balance. But having said that, that's the reality, and the transparency is we can produce a budget report at any point and show people that that is the case. There's just no big expenses, big numbers that are sitting in there in order to deal with some of these
I think
offsets.
the other thing that's important to the public to know is that when we went through our, transition in leadership over the summer, we talked about, how do we do an audit and make sure we have a correct fiscal infrastructure that we can rely on, and not just like a, plug in the dam each year. And we talked about, this committee talked about having an auditor come in and really look at the infrastructure through MASPO or whatnot. And we ultimately decided not to do it because we had a fresh set of eyes in Perry, who has, decades of experience doing budgets. And he's really done that for us over the last 8 months, 9 months, in terms of looking at it and saying, hey, this was underfunded. This was, looking at snipping areas there, but correctly putting, hey, preschool money should be spent in preschool. Maintenance should be here, custodial should be here. So I think I can speak for this committee that we're very comfortable with the fiscal infrastructure that we have right now. Now we just have to fund it, and fund it correctly. Through not just a budget strategy, but an investment strategy. And again, we and I say we, meaning every member, every citizen of Blackstone and Millville, we have to come up with what the best strategy is to fund education today, tomorrow, next year, FY 16, 17, and 18. And, we need to have that discussion openly, and it's going to be a tense discussion, there's going to be tense moments, but we have to have the balance of not putting this dam in place. And there's a lot of districts in the Commonwealth that are going through the same exact thing. And we can't rely on E&D anymore. That's not a sound fiscal option going forward. And we have to kind of look at that, because I think this committee also agrees we're not going to go below $500,000, because that puts us at even greater risk within our E&D account. So we need to have a lot of dialogue over the next 10 weeks around how we do that. And it's going to be tense. I'm not going to fool anybody. It's going to be hard.
I want to guide you to the next memo, what I've tried to do with the leadership team, and I want the committee to engage in this as well. The confidence in the budget that I built, and I'm certainly the first one, if there's a savings to be had in that budget, I will make it. It's easy to make a savings if something, were to change in our thinking. But based on the current information, I have reasonableness with that budget in terms of that, and moving forward. However, the way in which I've instructed the leadership team to look at it is the place where we want to have the least impact is on student learning. So we want to make sure that we look at all of the other areas, before we go in looking at things that have direct, impact on student learning. And it's important that people know that that's in our thinking. However, having said that, it's also important to know where are the big dollars. The big dollars are in personnel. All right? That doesn't mean that every person, that is there is necessarily going to have a direct impact on student learning in terms of that. So, we start by kind of assessing the last place we want to go with student learning. It really depends on the number that we're looking at. If I had to find $1.4 million, I would tell you that would impact student learning. It's just not possible to move that much reduction in the proposed budget, the certified budget, and the current assessments without impacting on student learning. A lot of it depends on what is the number that we're looking for. That is still in play in terms of talking with and negotiating with the two towns relative to that. But I don't want to mislead anybody. We are going to have to look at personnel. And we have direct, teaching staff, and then we have indirect teaching staff, and then we have support staff. And those elements are all open for review in terms of looking at this budget. The next area is to look at programs. We have certain programs that we're committed to, and what is our ability to deliver on those and to be able to kind of move forward. So we want to look programmatically at some of the things we do. And sometimes that decision would be, is that a program that we can afford if, in fact, the principal's being told that we're going to have to cut $1.4 million. It's a different question if we're cutting $250,000. But those areas are going to be in play here. There is no money in health insurance. We've done that squeeze. You don't get any better than having a 0% rate increase. That's not going to go any better than what we just got in terms of that. Okay, we got a fixed price for oil, so we know what we can project reasonably. On an average winter, you get another winter like this, the budget's going to be in trouble. But the reality is that's your best estimate going forward in terms of what you need to do. All right. So these are the areas that I think people need to understand. It's not about going back in the budget and taking out a case of paper here, 10 workbooks here, things like that. Or the cut that I would strongly recommend against would be just unilaterally going in and say, we're going to take 10% out of all instructional material accounts, because not all instructional materials accounts are the same. If you're going to teach reading in the literacy program that we're committed to in foundations, you've got to have the support books to make that happen. You've got to have the support, you've got to have those materials. You can't take 10% out of that account and then say 1 out of 10 children are not going to get a workbook. It doesn't work. That's
Those smart kids, they don't need the workbook.
Well, sure.
You rate too high, that's it.
But I'm just cautioning, in terms of that. That's never to say that in re-looking at a budget, that we can go back and tweak something. All right. The example I have, I've got $12,000 in maintenance for a new mower for the district. We're responsible for mowing our own fields. The piece of equipment we have right now, right, is being held together by wire and chewing gum. We have to mow the grass, and we don't have a reliable mower to do that. Now, could we take that out and run the risk of that? Sure. But the reality is, it comes, with some of an awareness and a cost that, that task has to be done. We have athletic programs. We got to keep the fields mowed, et cetera. So, there are things that I would look at, but I'm also going to have to advise. They come at some understanding of what you're giving up in order to do that.
Well, I think, over the years, we've said it, we've kicked the can down the road, and we don't have a can left. There's nothing left.
You can clearly see a pattern of how we continue to put E&D funds in. And then we hit a point where we can't anymore, like many schools. We go through all these reductions, then we start building it up again and doing that same dance. You know, I'm a believer in opening up, you know, the discussion and the dialogue, and we really can't do that dance anymore. We gotta open it up a little bit more, you know. I mean, I'm already hearing parents saying, oh, I'll just choice my kid to Nipmuc. Well,
And
Nipmuc,
that's a huge thing.
But
You know,
Nipmuc is
we can
already-
make our cuts, but parents aren't going to stand for it. We're going to end up losing money because kids are going to get
Sure,
choiced
it-
out.
It can be like dominoes, there's a risk of that, but I think Nipmuc is putting in 1.4 million from their E&D this year. They're not gonna have it next year.
Yeah.
So everyone's doing that same dance, and we have to think a little bit broader in terms of how we're gonna be able to fund all, and we've done a good job this year of saying what our initiatives are and what's important to us, and what should be important to the community. You know, we have to now start saying, all right, we need to start looking at funding things this way. And how do we generate more revenue? I mean, you said it, it's a revenue problem. It's not a budget problem, it's not an expense problem. We're barely getting by with the expenses we have.
And the transparency, one of the things that I really caution the committee, you know, again, when we know what the number is that we have a clear process to discuss the implications. Teachers need to know, staff need to know, parents need to know, the community needs to know. When you say, in order to meet this limitation, whatever that number is, all right, we are going to have to look in these areas, and we're going to have to make some reductions. And people need to hear the connection, you know, with the limitation, you know, the fiscal limitation, and what are the things that the school committee is going to discuss. My job as superintendent, working with the principals and Dr. Hayi in student services, is to kind of present you with scenarios, and that you get to choose. That's the role of the school committee. You get to make the hard vote as to what, on a budget. My job is to kind of bring you in the scenario of, look, you know, if we have a limitation, and I'm using a number here, of $500,000, these are the things that we've identified, recognizing, you know, we don't want to impact student learning, but we are going to recognize that it's going to have a toll on some personnel, professional personnel and support personnel. It may impact a program. We may have to not run a program, all right? Not run a program.
Mr.
and
Chairman?
be able to do that. But I want to have that transparency so that people make those connections in terms of where we are.
Mr. Buckley?
You know, this is probably will sound like you've heard this before from me, but, you know, if you look at the history of the district since ed reform, and you look at the period from 93 to 2002, thereabouts, when, you know, there was a strong emphasis of there was a commitment from the Commonwealth to get everyone to foundation level. And we saw an increase in Chapter 70 aid of about 115% over that, year over year. We didn't get all 115 in 1 year, but that was how it grew.
What was the years again?
1993 to 2002. And then 2003, the recession of 2003, which was really kind of the, you know, the backlash from 9/11, by the time it really hit the fiscal coffers in Massachusetts, saw it completely stabilized there. It put in really no Chapter 70 growth, even though we still had, you know, plenty of kids in seats, and we were actually still on the upswing. If you take a look at from 2003 to 2014, you'll see that our Chapter 70 grew 0.5%. So although inflation was much higher than that, and there's been more pushback on the communities to increase their contribution. Now, and I know all that, but for many years, the district did enjoy the fact that we got more than the minimum, or more than the minimum assessment. And I think it's important to understand that, you know, like that -305 on the back page, that's money that would normally be ours. And it goes out to another district because they're receiving our students. Diane's right. Parents nowadays vote with their feet, not necessarily, they're not locked in to stay in the hometown school, which is just to say the world. But, you know, we don't want to lose any more to that. And you know, from appearances, when you go by the schools on a bright sunny morning, you think the children getting off on the bus and everything looks fine. But the important thing is that are we doing what's right for the kids when they get inside? It's kind of you don't see that, the public doesn't see that. And, you know, this is part of an investment strategy that has to be invoked from, by the people of both communities. It's an investment in your children, maybe your neighbor's children. Maybe just your well-being in your community. We need that, and we also need Beacon Hill to finally stop kicking the can down the road, like these $25 a student increases in Chapter 70 do not cut it. And it's interesting to see that the 11 or 9 categories, they lump textbooks, instructional materials, and technology in all at one. Well, it wasn't even there in 1993, so it really hasn't been revisited in all this time. So, you know, I look forward to the opportunity to work with both towns on this, but, you know, and finally, I just want to point out that, you know, after the election last year, before the town meetings, it was a Herculean effort for this committee to go through that existing budget, to put positions back in, and to move much of the financing around to keep class sizes manageable and keep teachers and paraprofessionals in front of students. So I really hope that we can count on people to support our efforts.
So I had one question.
Go ahead.
So, as you bring us recommendations,
I will bring you scenarios, all
if you,
right?
as
And
you bring
get
us
to pick.
scenarios,
You get to pick.
are they coming from each building? Are you going to say to your principals,
The reductions,
this is what we
the
need?
scenarios will reflect the thinking of the leadership team, and we will be thinking district. Yes. But some of those reductions could be more heavily based in one building than the other. Yes, because you can't, it's not a per capita or per student process. You have to look holistically at the district and what are the needs, you know? And we're still trying to finalize the enrollment for kindergarten. That's a variable. You know, that's coming to closure, hopefully in the next 2 weeks, you know, with commitments of the number of children in kindergarten. That'll be a variable. We'll obviously talk about it. That's data, and the principals will have to discuss that, all right? Much the same way as we know how many children from the 8th grade are not going to move to the high school. They may go to BVT, they may go to Norfolk Aggie, they may go to Tri-County, or they may go to a private or parochial school. That obviously impacts Mr. Dudak's planning for how many sections of freshman English does he need, because of the available 8th graders that are moving forward, you know, to the high school. So that's data that the administrators will be looking at, all right? And that's certainly part of the equation. And I'm not weighting one school over the other. It's really, this is a district-wide issue in terms of that. And that's why I use the term scenario. I will not give you a list of 1 to 9. I'll give you a list of things that we have talked about that we're putting on the list. And they're not going to be necessarily weighted. The easy ones, I will give you a recommendation on.
Okay.
I will give you a recommendation on an easy one. All right? We can make this reduction. It has no impact. Boom. I would make that. But then the tougher ones are going to be really laid out for you in terms of what I refer to as a budget scenario.
So this memo here
Yes.
was given,
To the principal.
was given to the principal. I just, one of the things on here, we have been asked by the administrators for our commitment to the literacy program. So I guess I wouldn't expect something like that to
No, that's just an example of.
come from them
No,
saying.
no, this is just an example of a
Right,
program.
of a
I'm sorry,
program.
yeah, no.
Okay.
No, what's on.
I know these aren't our
No, these aren't-
scenarios,
no.
but in my
Yeah.
opinion, if we've shown our commitment
Right.
to something.
Yes.
I would hope that that's
Oh,
something that
absolutely.
isn't
Absolutely.
going to be
Yeah,
looked at.
I'm sorry. Under these topics, I pick things to let you know what is a program, and, you know, what are some of the things that would impact on the student learning. Sorry, I should have been clearer in that, in terms of that. All right. It's going to be difficult, because at this point, you're dealing with an equation where there are too many variables, all right? There are too many variables. The variable of the unknown in terms of Blackstone and Millville. I've discussed with Mr. Chaplin, we really do need to schedule a meeting with the Finance Committee from both towns and the Board of Selectmen like we did in the fall. They may not all be able to come, but we need to be in the same room so that we're looking at the same numbers. I have been very transparent in my budget information. Any document that you get, it has been shared electronically with the identified people in Blackstone and Millville. If they want any additional information, and if they email me or call me, I'm more than happy to go over the detail with them. All right?
We need to get that on the calendar.
So, you know, my
Right.
sense,
Yep.
I agree, since these numbers are going to be sent to them now.
Yes.
That we certified this.
Right.
I think we need to open our door.
Yes.
To let them know.
But the point that Perry made around, after every one of our meetings, they've gotten exactly the financial information we've gotten. I've emailed them to every finance committee member and board of selectmen and town administrator in both towns the very next day. So they're aware
Right.
of the process so far.
So obviously, our hopes are is that their FinComs are going to recommend these to their voters.
You can
That's
you
our-
can think that, but I think
I
it's
said
going
that's
to
what
be.
our hopes
Right.
are. That's what we need to happen to be able to operate our budget.
Well, I also think that we have to have some type of sensitivity, because we're all taxpayers too, and I know what the discussion's going to be like, you know. Everyone here wants to have the best schools, and we always want to be chasing excellence. We agree on that. I also want to have the best police department, and highway department, and fire department, and recycling center, and those things. And we have to create that balance of what and when I say what our vision is, I mean the community and ours vision of how do we fund education, but also recognizing the tax burden that everybody in our towns are going through. You know, I'm a strong believer in we need to fund this differently moving forward, but it might be a step-by-step process that we have to do that over a certain amount of years. I'm not afraid to say the word override on TV tonight. I'm going to say it. It doesn't mean we're going to do it, because doing it, we have no control over that. That's a public vote. But that we might have to talk about that as part of the equation.
I think we need to do a better job of articulating beyond the finance committees, beyond the town officials, what's at stake here. Because they recommend, but it comes down to the vote.
Sure.
And if the majority of people at the town meeting do not have a vested interest in the schools, you should, as a taxpayer, everybody who has a home in Blackstone or Millville needs to worry about what the value of their house is. And the school plays a large part in how your house is evaluated. But if they don't have a vested interest as far as having children in the schools, you know, they worry more about what their tax bills are. But the fact is, if the schools go down, their tax evaluations go down, and it's harder to sell your house. It's just a snowball effect.
Yeah, I agree. I think we do have to make the general public, and we've talked about this all year, a little more budget literate on what's at stake here. And I think that's part of the discussion we're going to have over the next 10 weeks. I think this document that Perry has now should be put online, so everyone can look at it, the summary of it. You know, we as a committee can decide that, you know, to do that.
And when you talk override, and nobody wants to hear override, but real-life scenario, in Uxbridge, years back, when they voted down to get a new high school, They went from having a positive school choice, they were losing $1.5 million, walked out the door when they got on probation and they were on warning with NEAS because they wouldn't build a new school. And it was short-sighted of them to say, we're not going to spend the money on a new school, you'll be fine. Yeah, they survived, but the fact was, you had $1.5 million walking out of the school budget because you choiced out.
Again, I think no one here is interested in getting into a constituency war of elders versus school parents and whatnot. I'm really not interested in that. I'm just interested in presenting very clear facts about where we're at, and not threats, not blue lines, not anything around. This is just where we're at, and we're unable to continue to put E&D money in. The public's E&D money into the equation anymore, and we have to start thinking a little bit differently.
I'm not interested in a fight either, but when you have very little parents coming out to town meeting to vote on the budget, we're not getting our constituency out there. That means the people that are attending our schools and the parents that are in our schools don't care, or they just don't understand the importance of coming out and saying, no, we really think school is important.
Well, I think it's having a common vision around how we fund education. That's really it. And how do we balance that with every other tax burden that's out there? And just being honest about it, you know?
The document that I just circulated, I'd given to Mr. Chaplin, he'd asked to just show a budget. This goes back to fiscal 11, so it's fiscal 11, 12, 13, 14, and then the proposed budget for 15. Just how much has the line items grown year over year? And, you know, what is it, you know, in the bottom line, right? And I think it's telling when you look at this school district that in fiscal 11, the budget was $20,540,000, and now it's grown to $22,090,000. You know, it's, when you do the math, it is not dramatic, but again,
It's the revenue.
but from the town's perspective, by your contributing, you know, starting back in fiscal 11 with $400,000 to reduce $350 in fiscal 12, $450 in fiscal 13, and $655 in fiscal 14, there's been a dependence on a revenue that eventually got exhausted. That eventually got exhausted, all right? And I, you know, I think I, you know, want to point that out again. It's this is our dilemma with this particular budget that I presented to you. It's the revenue side of it that's out of balance. It's out of balance. And we need to tell that story. Because you're not spending a lot more money. It's the way in which you're assessing it by using one-time revenue to do that. Using one-time revenue to buy a truck, you buy it once, it's fine. But once you use one-time revenue to offset salaries and supplies, materials, the costs of running your school district, those costs continue year over year. Those costs continue year over year, and you don't have the $655,000 that you had a year ago to offset out of E&D. It was too much. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, any other discussion in this area? Questions? Okay, we'll go to our second public forum. If anybody from the public would like to come up and dialogue with us, please do.
Mr.
Just-
Chaplin.
I'm good, how are you? Just
Good.
state your name and
Esther
where you live.
Covey, Summer Street in Blackstone. First grade teacher at John F. Kennedy. I just have a broad question about the timeline for what's going to happen. I know that, you know, with a projected $1.4 million deficit on our end, there are people watching tonight if it's streamed live. As far as when staff would be notified if in fact we're making reductions in force. So just a guesstimate, I know that we had talked before about that, you'd given a rough estimate about possibly when, but
The official would be the action of both town meetings, because that's the appropriating authority.
okay.
But clearly going into town meeting, we're not going to hope is going to be our strategy. Hopefully, we're going to have the meeting, several meetings before town meeting to see, you know, what is the what is the number that we can agree on? Or what is a strategy to make up some of this revenue shortfall to do that? So it's difficult to give a timeline other than to say what's scheduled is town meetings.
Okay.
And that's when the town would actually officially vote up or down on the assessment. And remember, at town meeting, they don't vote our budget, they vote their assessment. They're not voting on the 3.4% increase in the budget. What they're voting on is the number that we put in the certification, which is up dramatically because of the loss of revenue. So from their perspective, it's not the budget, it's how much more money we're asking to support that budget.
Correct.
And that will be, clearly the subject. I believe, as superintendent, all right, is to keep everybody informed as to how we're proceeding with that. And I've made every attempt to keep everybody informed when I saw the budget revenue problem and identified it back in October, that we've had that on the discussion, and that we've disseminated that information, to the Teachers Association on a regular basis. I don't, as superintendent, nor does this school committee, control the actual decision. The decision would ultimately be made by town meeting. So those are the dates, and I don't have the two dates in my mind. I want to say,
Second week of May, and maybe the last week of
right.
Tuesday after Memorial Day. And then as far as non-professional status, teachers, those are the teachers that are the most anxious.
Correct. Right.
Is April 15th still the,
I'm sorry?
April
No.
15th, that's not a,
June 15th.
June 15th.
June 15th.
Okay.
But again, I will say very clearly, as we are discussing what I referred to earlier as scenarios, if somebody's position is in one of those scenarios, I would be communicating as superintendent through the principal that people would need to know that that program or a position to which they, by the virtue of not having professional teacher status, would be impacted. Or if they were a paraprofessional, teacher aide, et cetera, that's part of the discussion.
and I think in today's day and age, they all anticipate getting those notices, but until they actually come, it does
Right.
cause anxiety and,
Yeah, legally, the notice would have to be done by the 15th of June. In all fairness, as we progress in the discussion, I would be issuing, periodic memos to the faculty and staff as to what's being discussed. I don't want to alarm anybody at this point, but I do need to tell people that there are no places for me to go find the money in the budget other than looking at personnel programs. The goal would be to have the last place we would look would be to impact what goes on in student learning, all right? But that doesn't leave us a whole lot in our budget.
no, it doesn't. And then I have one other question.
We already don't have, we don't have librarians. You know the scenario.
Absolutely.
There are a lot of districts that have positions that are not directly in the classroom. We don't have those positions. We don't.
Nope, we
So,
don't.
that plays out, and as the principals say, well, we've given up all those positions over the last 5 years. And that adds to our dilemma in terms of that.
And then I just have one other question about the aftercare program. I haven't, Nadine's done a great job, I think, of advertising it a little bit better. Can you give us an update as far as where that program stands going
The
forward?
school-
I did see the
The last,
registration.
Ms. Carter was in here at our last school committee meeting in February. The committee had a discussion with her. I issued her a memo. She has some very specific tasks. The school committee particularly wanted to see a market plan to see whether or not that program is viable to go forward, the caveat being it has to cover all of its expenses. So
Okay.
it's been very clearly stated that the program going forward, there must be a plan to show the school committee how that program would be self-supporting.
And I have seen a lot of those advertisements on Facebook, and she has done a good job
Right,
moving
so-
forward.
But ultimately, the committee, I believe, I can speak for you, this was a pilot year, but going forward, the expectation is that we would have reasonable expectation that the signups would increase and revenue would be generated so that the program would be self-supporting. And we should know that. I don't have that folder with me, but I believe all of that information had to be back to me by mid-May. But I've already met with her, laid out, timeline of things that she needs to do to demonstrate and then come back and speak to the committee. I believe by June 1st, we said that she would come back to the committee. But clearly, the expectation is it would be self-supporting.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good night.
Good to see you.
Nice to see you.
Okay, moving forward, upcoming meetings.
I would suggest, Mr. Chairman, that we possibly schedule, I know you've scheduled a meeting for next Tuesday night for the superintendent, but I would suggest that we try to look to that first week in April to have a meeting on the budget.
Would that be with us or with the FinCom and Selectmen?
I defer to you as chair, but I think that would be a productive meeting. I realize the election is the 7th, so I don't know that, the
Well, I think
nuance
we
of
can-
that, but
What date did you say?
April 7th is the election in both towns?
No, you said a date for a meeting.
The week, that week of,
April 1st, that
April
week of
3rd.
April 1st.
yeah, Monday is March 31st through April 4th.
April 3rd, we can shoot for, and with the FinCom and Board of Selectmen in both towns, and offer it, and whoever can come, can
And
come.
then you're scheduled for the 10th, so that's the reorg meeting.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah. I just think there's a momentum here that we
Mhm.
need to get in
Yeah,
front
yeah,
of.
you're absolutely right.
So I would suggest if we go back to our Thursday schedule of Thursday, April 3rd, and then if you would extend an invitation
Sure.
to the Selectmen and
Yep.
the Finance Committee.
Do the 3rd and the 10th, and then nothing else.
Nothing
Nothing
else
else in April, right, because it's vacation. 3rd, the 10th? The 10th of the meeting?
10th is our reorg meeting,
Okay.
and then the next
17th
week is the
is-
17th, and then it's school vacation.
School vacation is the week of the 21st.
Yeah.
It's a little later this year.
Right.
Yeah, so what are our meetings, the 3rd and the 10th?
Third and 10th now, but we're thinking of scheduling other meetings and trying
Okay.
to brainstorm. We're gonna probably have to schedule more meetings to brainstorm and strategize and dialogue about this budget. Okay, good and welfare for school committee members.
Oh, nothing new today, sorry.
Don't be sorry.
Glad. All you MTV.
Okay, just a shout out or a thank you to, the folks in both Sutton and Wellesley that took the time and from their schedule to meet with us. It was very informative and just a note of appreciation for them to share the part of their day with us on Thursday and Friday.
I have nothing.
You want to talk to anybody here,
I'm ready. I can't talk about things I don't know about. So I don't talk much.
I'm good. Pass on it.
I'll just add that all of our budget presentation material is up on our website, on the district page.
Yes, there's now in the banner, where to access that information.
Okay, so all the presentation material and information from our public hearing, as well as our line item comparison.
That'll be up tomorrow.
That'll be up tomorrow. So we really urge everyone to start looking at it. We're going to make a continued effort to include the community and the stakeholders in kind of, really what this is a campaign to kind of really dialogue about how we can budget differently and acknowledge burden on taxpayers and so forth, but really around our educational goals for the community. So we look forward to that level of engagement and moving forward. Anything else from the committee? No. Okay, I would look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion made by Ms. Robin,
Second?
second by Mr. Tringali. We're adjourned.
Thank you.